All right, let's draw some ellipses. In William Powell's perspective book on page 36 and 37, there are some great examples of how to draw ellipses using a square or a box. And an ellipse is just a circle laying down or in perceived space for getting a side plane view. So we have the top view, and then as that circle continues to lay flat in space, we're seeing more of an ellipse. Notice there is an axis to the ellipse. We can see what the general angle is of that ellipse. And anything that you draw with an ellipse can be fit into a box or into a square, drawn in perspective to help us draw ellipses accurately in perspective. So let's do some applied ellipses. I'm going to draw a chariot. Get my paper in the frame here. All right, let's draw a 2-point perspective chariot with 2 wheels. Let's get my horizon line, my 2 vanishing points. A chariot just sounds cool, but this concept can be applied to cars, to wheelbarrows. I just wanted to only draw 2 wheels, and a chariot sounds cool, so. All right, anything can be fit into a box. Let me draw my box that my chariot will be in. I'll actually, just for clarity, let me make that a little bit deeper. The chariot is going to be very simple. And that's because this is not about the chariot, this is about the ellipses that are the wheels to the chariot. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you already understand 2-point perspective. So I'm just doing my thing, drawing this box in 2-point perspective, doing it quickly. Oh, that's like a perfect lineup. I'll try to give myself a little bit of space right there so I can see the difference. I don't like it when I draw things in perspective, I don't like it when lines line up perfectly visually like that, because then it can mess me up as I use those guidelines to try to find other intersections and things. So I will take a mental note that that's pretty close, but I do have some differences there. All right. Not too worried about this right here. All right, so this is gonna be my chariot. I'm not gonna spend too much time making the chariot look beautiful, to be honest. What I will do is I'll maybe just, let me find the midpoint here. Remember to find the midpoint, connect diagonal corners, find that intersection right there. And maybe I'll just bring that to the finishing point too. Okay, so like I can do something like this. And then maybe, you know, if this is my chariot, maybe I just do this. Whoop, ta-da. This is, you know, that side panel, this is the front. So that means this guy goes back here. And I'm not gonna give depth to this. Oops, I overshot it. I'm not gonna give depth to this chariot. I'm just going to give it a two-dimensional thing. What's the word I'm looking for? Two-dimensional form. Let me bolden the shape of my chariot. It can be difficult talking it through as you're doing it, because I need to then think while I'm doing it, as well as draw, and I'm thinking while I'm drawing. So it can be hard to commentate. I think most artists who commentate as they draw will find that to be a difficult thing. All right, so there's my super basic chariot. You guys get the idea. All right, I'm gonna put my wheel. You can probably see I need to put a wheel here and I need to put a wheel on the other side. Now, obviously the wheel that's furthest back from me, the viewer, is probably gonna be most, if not all, completely visually blocked by the chariot itself, but either way, I'm still gonna draw both. All right, so let's assess where I'm gonna position this front wheel. The wheel itself will also be just two-dimensional. This panel, I'm gonna find my midpoint. Bring this guy straight down. Let me start my box here. I want it to be lined up in the middle. Okay, so I'm gonna draw an ellipse as the wheel here on this side. And as we all know with 2-point perspective, when you're just focused on one side panel, that is then just 1-point perspective to this one vanishing point. Okay, now this panel is also 1-point perspective, but it goes back to that vanishing point. So the cube in its entirety is 2-point perspective. This one wall, if you will, is just 1-point perspective. So I've found my midpoint. I just went a little bit lower than the midpoint to start the top of my wheel. This is the top edge of my wheel. I just chose this. I'm gonna now, remember, I'm putting my ellipse in a square, just like how the book shows. So you'll see how I'm making my square. It needs to be in perspective. You see what I'm doing here? I just let this like help me line up like where I want the top to be. And I'm thinking, let me see. I think I want the midline of my chariot, so like this midline of the side plane of my chariot, to actually also be the midline of my wheel. So how would I do that? Well, I already have the back of my wheel. I'm gonna bring this guy straight down. And so this is the midline. Okay, and this guy looks like about halfway, like the mid is here. So this guy through this guy right here. It's close. It doesn't totally line up, but I'll go with it. What I had done just then is I wanted to figure out where should my front part of the wheel stop, and I used this midline. This is a midpoint of this panel for the chariot. I just brought that straight down, and I designated the back part of my wheel. I need this to come and intersect somewhere straight down here. And so this line right here, the top and the bottom, I just visually assessed where's about the midway point. This, then I drew a line that went back to the vanishing point in perspective, and then where this guy and this guy, like they all converge, and that's where I drew from this corner down through that intersection to here, and this is where I brought up that line. It's very similar to the fence posts, if you're familiar with that video. So like I said, it's super close. It doesn't totally match up. I'm gonna erase some lines so that they're not super confusing, including that little edge of the chariot we're not gonna see. You can see some ghosting there, but I'm now gonna just reinstate those lines. There we go. Okay, so do you see how this lines up pretty close to this, but it's not totally perfect. That's okay. All right, so this back panel, okay, the one that's furthest away from us, I'm gonna grab those corners as well, because I need to find the midpoint there. So knowing that we're gonna have a ton of lines all over the place, let me erase these. These were guidelines that helped me get the midpoint for this, to help me get the nice little flourish top of my chariot. So now that I don't need it, I can erase it. Let me find the midpoint and therefore the midline of this guy. Okay, so this guy's right there. So same basic thing, okay. So notice the amount of space, you know, the midpoint here and a little bit down is gonna be the top line there of my wheel. So that means a little bit below here is gonna be the top line there. Oh, that like lines up very close. So I'm gonna grab, so this point, I see, you know, the midpoint of this panel, drop it straight down. This is about where it lines up here. Okay, so that now goes back to the vanishing point. This midpoint drops down here. Okay, so this guy is this guy, respectively, on either side. In order to get the wheels on either side to be the same as far as like where they're attached on either end of the chariot, I need to extend these corners. It's almost like this is the front panel of another box, another 2-point perspective box. I know there's a lot of guidelines. I'm gonna draw these guys and then I'm gonna make sense of it. All right, so corner, corner, so I'm following this along. Okay, so it's gonna be somewhere here. Now this is, it's significant because this is the side corner, or I'm sorry, this is the corner closest to me of the chariot itself. The wheel in space is pushed back. So I know that the wheel in space here is gonna be pushed back. So this guy is this. Okay, so let's bring him to the vanishing point like that. Okay, so this corner meets up right there. Okay, these two guys correlate. Okay, so then this guy can drop straight down. Okay, do you see what I'm doing here? And then this guy goes over, this guy, boop. He goes straight down. This corner continues, correlates with this corner. There we go. So do you see this box? It's like a rectangular prism. It's kind of long. These are the panels. These side panels are where I'm going to be placing my ellipses. And I was able to get them to be pretty much in the same place where I was using the midpoint of these chariot side panels, dropping that straight down just to align it up as in the middle as possible, you know. To be comparable, using that point here along this line to drag that across, I'm connecting that to the vanishing point over there. That then, from there, I can bring it back this way, and that's how I'm getting this line right there. Okay, so for those of you who can visualize this and can see it already, I actually won't be able to see this wheel at all because the chariot will visually block my view of it, but that's okay. I'm going to still draw it in. So now we're drawing ellipses here. Okay, I'm more or less going to be making a pizza pie. Connect it like this. It's going to be very, very oblong, but this is it. I usually sketch it in to get the feel of it, get my arm loose, get that ellipse looking as nice as possible with as few tumors and craters and wonky things as possible, and then I darken it. All right, so there's that guy. And now I've got this one back here. There's a lot of guidelines. Feel free to erase as you go. But if you can see past it and if you can focus on the guidelines that you know you're making right now, and you can overlook the ones you've made before that are obsolete, you can then just leave them and erase them at the very end. All right, he looks a little bit more like an egg. He's not very beautiful, but these are my two wheels on either side of my chariot. Let me bolden the Chariot here. Those are the wings of the Chariot. So you can see we wouldn't be able to see that wheel. You would be able to see this one though. Okay, so now this is the floor. This is that inside panel of my Chariot. And there we go. I'm just gonna leave it like this, even though we wouldn't be able to see that in reality. If this were a clear Chariot, that is how we would see those two wheels right there in perspective with relatively the exact same place bolted to the side panels of our Chariot. And we are good to go.